All right, we are live.
We are live. Welcome everyone to this wonderful webinar. Today we are going to hear about Vaadin 24.8 release. It's going to be packed with multiple features, new stuff, new enhancements, lots of good and interesting stuff. My name is Mika Andersson from Product Marketing, and with me I've got
Hey, this is Jonas, the founder of Vaadin.
Leif, VP of Research.
Rolf, product manager.
And I'm Mark, product strategist and product manager for Copilot. We
You were
didn't
just saying
decide
something about the
beforehand on the order.
synchronization.
Well done, well done. Alrighty, but that was the greetings, so you all know us, and let's jump into the agenda. Very quickly, as we have lots of stuff to be covered today, we'll start with the frameworks, moving on to the design system, meaning the UI components of ours. Then going to talk about the Copilot, Control Center, and finally Modernization Toolkit. And in the end, we'll hear a few words from Jonas regarding a roadmap. But without further ado, we'll jump into the actual presentation. And as usual, feel free to use the chat to ask questions. If you have any questions during the presentation, we try our best to address all the questions during the presentation, but depending on the amount of questions, some might be left till the end of the session. But yeah, with that, let's get started. Frameworks. So let me just hand it over to you, Leif.
Yeah, I can talk while you try to get my screen visible. So from the frameworks, I mean, there's always lots and lots and lots of things that we have made, and I'm just going to highlight four of those. So please check the release notes for all the enhancements. The four things on my agenda are upload and download handlers for Flow, signals for Flow, lazy views for Hilla, and internationalization for Hilla. So starting with the upload and download handlers, what we observed was that the existing APIs for handling uploads and downloads, they had some things that just couldn't be done in a sensible way. So we started from scratch and realized that, hey, we should make it easy to just kind of handle the requests as HTTP requests and then build helpers on top of that to make it easier to use. So if we actually look at some code, that's not the code, that's the code. I built a simple upload example here. We're using the upload component as before, but now with this upload handler API. So we can see actually, if I just find the right keys, that the receiver API that has been there since forever is now deprecated because this new API replaces it. But you can keep using the old API. We're not removing them anytime soon. And for the upload handler, there's a bunch of static factory methods to, for instance, receive the upload into just a byte array in memory, or to some file that you define upfront where it should be, or then to just create a temp file wherever that happens to be. But in this case, I'm actually directly implementing the interface. And what I get is that I just receive an upload event that gives access to a whole bunch of things about the upload, and in particular the input stream. So you can use that to live just stream the data to wherever you want to have it. In this case, I'm just reading all the bytes from it. Another thing you get access to is the UI instance that this belongs to, because this is actually handled as a separate request, so we need to lock the UI if we want to make any changes there. And in this case, what we're doing is that we're creating a download link to get the same thing that was just uploaded. So maybe a silly example, but it helps show all the features here. The upload, it's an anchor component as always, and here we also have a new download handler. Here also we have a whole bunch of factory methods. Download directly from a class path resource, from a file in the file system, from a servlet context resource, or in this case from an input stream. Or you can also just implement the download handler interface directly and just write to an output stream. But in this case, creating a byte array input stream from this, setting the name, content type, and the length, and we return that from the handler. And the final thing we're adding is for both uploads and downloads, you can now listen to when the upload or download starts, the progress as it goes, and also when it's completed. So now we can show a notification when the upload is actually done. So what this looks like, very simple, uploaded the file, the link popped up, and then when I click it, it actually downloads that file and shows the notification when we're done. Next out, we got signals. This is a huge thing, but it's still in preview. We have a way to go still. So we'll actually have a separate webinar in a couple of weeks to go through the kind of vision behind the signals and how we think it will eventually be. For now, I'm just showing what we have in 24.8. The whole point with signals is that you get reactive UI state management. What that means is that you just define this is the state used in this view or this part of the component tree. So in this case, it's just a count for how many times this button has been clicked. And then what you do is that you configure your components to use the data from this state. So in this case, I'm configuring that this button should run the setText method with the result of applying this string format with the value of this signal. And that's what we see here. And then the real trick is that then when the user does something, all we need to do is to update this state. We get an event and then we do count increment by 1. All we need to do is to update the state, and then the framework takes care of knowing what are all the parts that should be updated. So in this simple example, now this button actually updates the state, and from that things get updated. And the cool thing is that this is just state that can be shared however you want between different components, between different parts in the same view, or you can even share it between users. So if I just take this same state holder, the signal, and turn it into a static variable, then it's shared with all instances. So here I have another instance, and now when I click the button in one of the windows, then the count also goes up for all the users. As said, this is still a preview feature. We will make the APIs more smooth. We will make more parts of the framework use signals and so on. And that's kind of topic for a whole separate session.
Hey, Leif, one question. So
Yeah.
you said we make APIs more smooth. Are you mainly meaning by adding more APIs that make it easier to use, or are you also anticipating that some of the foundational APIs that we have in the product are still changing?
Yeah, so my vision is that everything will be fully backwards compatible. So we're just adding on top of what we have here already. It's the same thing that you got a button that can set a text to it. It's just who sets that text. Do you do it directly from the click listener, or is it the signal library that actually runs that setter? So from that point of view, everything will be backwards compatible.
So in that sense, people can start to use it today.
You can start playing with it today, yes. And the thing we want to do, one is that you shouldn't need to use this static method. You should just be able to do something like button.setText, give it the format, and then give it the signal instead of having to use this kind of static method. And the other thing is that everything here is about UI state management. And for instance, form binding is something we want to make also powered by signals. Routing, so kind of getting view parameters or so on, backed by signals. CRUDs backed by signals. It touches the whole framework eventually. But the good thing is that we can very well introduce things one by one. So the question there was, when will it be done? Probably several years, but it will incrementally just get better and better. And as we get a little bit confidence, we will remove the feature flag, removing basically preview status, and then just keep building on top of that.
If I may rephrase your when it's done. I guess translation from Leif to English would be that when do we expect to reach the asymptotic kind of a endpoint in there? So when we stop adding more stuff because we can't figure out anything to add anymore? So hopefully GA is way sooner than that.
Yeah, definitely.
Hey, I want to add one more thing because 24.8 is a release with many kind of a nice improvement, like small improvements, ergonomics improvement, like what you discussed with upload. I think there is one exception, and that's Signal. So this is truly foundational. This is something really big. So it's I hope people play with this and come to webinar that we have around this, because this can be really transforming the whole programming model to be even better. It's kind of I mean, have hopefully the good sides of React in Java. So I think this is might be a strange statement, but if you can speak to that, Leif, on how do you kind of see this change?
Yeah, I think that's the upcoming webinar, because yes, I definitely agree. It's foundational in a way. It's kind of, I mean, at the same time, you can keep doing things as before, but my vision is that you wouldn't want to do that. But again, how that works out is something that requires a little bit more going through the background and seeing more examples that we don't have time for right now. So I would just say stay tuned for more.
There is one question from Brian. Will the preview version be usable in production environments? There is one catch. The catch is that it doesn't support clustering out of the box yet. So we hope to add clustering support in there as well. So within the context of one user session, one user, it should be fully functional in production. But if you want to have user communications and you have multiple nodes in your cluster, then you need to do something more. And we hope to add that something more as a kind of out of the box feature in Vaadin a bit later. So right now you would have to be kind of wiring that up by hand.
Yeah. Also, preview doesn't necessarily mean that there would be production blocking bugs, only that we are not certain that the API and the kind of underlying design will remain exactly as it is in future versions also. So we don't have any plans for making breaking changes, but since this is a new, very fundamental thing, we just haven't yet gotten the confidence to say that this is the API that we will have for the next 10 years.
And I'd like to add, for Brian and the others who are interested in signals, we are, as Leif mentioned, going to do a webinar on signals in 2 weeks from now. So that's a really great opportunity to learn more about signals.
Yep. Next thing, lazy views in Hilla. So with the now starting from 24.8 with the file system based router in Hilla, all views except the index view, and if you have a login view, all other views will by default be lazy loaded, not included in the main JavaScript bundle, but instead loaded on demand. So to see how this works, this only works in production, so this is a separate deployment here. If you look at the code, I mean, there's nothing special in the lazy view, but here in the internationalization view that we will look more closely at very soon, I have in the view config said that this view is not lazy. So what we see now is that when I look at the requests, if I just reload the page here now, it loads 3 kind of common JavaScript bundles and then the lazy view implementation, which is really small. If I instead go to the internationalization view and reload that, it doesn't load the lazy view implementation yet, which means that if you have hundreds of views, then you don't have to have the user download all of them at once. But then immediately when navigate there, then we got that additional lazy view JavaScript bundle also. Finally, the last feature would be internationalization for Hilla. This is something that has been in preview for a while, and now we're also making some refinements. So if we keep looking, at this internationalization view, now again the live version or dev mode version, what we have here is that the label for the text field and for the button, they use the translate function to look up the actual value based on some kind of translation key. We mark these keys explicitly as translation keys because we also split this automatically by the lazy loading of the views, so that when you open a view, you only need to load from the server translations from those for those keys that are actually in that view. The translations themselves are in exactly the same property files that you also use for your Java code. So this is just kind of src main resources, Vaadin i18n, and there you can have whatever many translation bundles you want to have. And just to show that this actually works, I also have Swedish translations for this view. So if I in the browser say that Swedish is my primary language and I reload the page, then it uses the Swedish translation. Those were the features from the frameworks that I wanted to highlight. We got new upload and download handlers for handling more cases than before, and also give these convenience APIs for things like servlet resources and so on. Look at the signal preview, reactive UI state management for flow. This is a big one, but leaving room for an upcoming webinar to go into details there. We got automatic lazy loading of views in Hilla, and we got internationalization for Hilla now as a no longer as a preview feature. That's all for me. Do we have any more questions, or should we jump over to the design system maybe next?
Yeah, I think we can jump into the design system just to be sure that we are not going too much over time. So let's hand it over to Rolf.
All right, thanks. Yeah, plenty of exciting stuff coming released in the design system side in 24.8. I think the most visible thing is the new master detail layout, which is a component for doing these kinds of side-by-side splits, where, for example, you might have a CRUD view where you have a master list on one side, and then you have a detail, for example, a form for editing that item on the right-hand side. And the big thing with this, or one of the main points of this component, is that, as you can see in the animation here, that detail side automatically becomes a overlay if there isn't enough space for both the master and the detail to be rendered side by side. So the component tries to automatically determine what the minimum size of the master side is. In this case, the grid doesn't really contribute to that in any way because it's horizontally scrolling. But the toolbar above the grid is what instead determines the minimum size that the master side can shrink to. And then the detail area becomes an overlay. And you can define also a explicit size or minimum size for the master side, and the same for the detail side. And you can use it for CRUDs. You can use it for any kind of view where you want to have things side by side, of which one of those may need to render as an overlay on smaller viewports. That was the component can also render the detail as what we call a stack, which is kind of a full-size overlay that completely covers the master area. This is a common pattern in mobile UIs, for example. And as you may notice, there are some subtle transition animations going on when the detail area appears and disappears. There's also a vertical orientation mode that I don't have a demo for here. Finally, I want to say a couple of things. Still, that the master detail layout is optimized for use with the framework's router layout mechanism. So one way to use it is, for example, in a CRUD use case, is to make the master detail layout itself a parent router layout that maps, for example, in this case, to the URL path tasks. And then you implement the detail area as a nested route layout, which opens inside of the master detail layout by default. and you can map that route to, for example, tasks /123, where 123 is the identifier for the item that we want to show. So you don't have to manage the showing and hiding of that panel, that drawer at all. You can just navigate to tasks /123, and the master detail layout takes care of showing it either as a side-by-side panel or as an overlay. And this component is also a preview release at the moment. And as mentioned, that doesn't mean that you can't use it in a production environment. It just means that we're not entirely sure yet about the API and the functionality and the behavior and so on. So we might still make some small tweaks to those.
So just to kind of state it out, when it can control the router, it kind of allows you to get deep links by default without you doing anything. So it's super handy that way.
Yeah.
Is there any kind of limitations to that, Rolf?
I mean, there are so many ways you can build your routes in Vaadin these days. So probably there are some limitations that I can't think of right now. But because it basically just uses the router layout mechanism, I can't really think of anything right now. And yeah, that's a good point, that you can just, for example, share the URL containing that tasks /123 path. You can share that, send it over Slack to somebody, and when they open it, they will get straight into that view, and the detail panel will open automatically. Next up is the Markdown component, which hardly surprisingly is a component for rendering Markdown. So you give it a string with Markdown content, so that can contain, for example, text formatting, headings, lists, tables, images, and even HTML, and it renders it as HTML. Another component that actually utilizes this new Markdown functionality is the message list. We have added Markdown support also for messages, so you can add, you can enter the content of a message as Markdown, and it will render as HTML. And there's also a new API for appending text into an existing message, which is great for AI chat use cases, because AIs, as you probably know, typically stream their responses chunk by chunk instead of giving the entire response in one go. And previously, that has been pretty difficult to use with the message list, but now with this new append API, you can do that. I'll start this video here to show how it works. So I'm writing a prompt to the AI, and it starts to stream the response. And as you can see, as the response gets parsed as Markdown, it gets rendered as HTML and automatically updates as it comes into the UI. There's also a new add item API for adding new messages to the list, so that you don't have to send the entire list back to the client every time you add a message, and some accessibility tweaks to support these new features. And then on the form layout side, we have a new layouting mode called auto-responsive. So the animation here shows a pretty common thing you want to do with a responsive form. You want it to be 2 columns when it fits. You want it to be 1 column when 2 don't fit. And you want the labels to maybe jump from the side to be above the fields if there isn't enough space to have them on the side. Now, the way you did this, or still can do with the form layout, is to define every one of those cases as a responsive step. And for each responsive step, you provide a breakpoint that is the width, the minimum width at which that configuration comes into play. So for 270 pixels and above, you get 1 column with the labels on the side. And for 570 pixels, you get 2 columns with labels on the side. And anything below that is 1 column with the labels above. And the thing with this API is that you need to figure out what those breakpoints should be, because typically, you know, for example, how wide you want your fields to be. Let's say you want them to be 150 pixels, and then you want your labels to be 120 pixels. So then, of course, you do the calculations, you do the math. One column is 120 plus 150 pixels, so that's 270. And then, of course, for 2 columns, you need to double that, but there's also a gap between the columns, so you need to add that. And you need to do all this math yourself. And the thing is, computers are kind of good at math, so why do we make people do that themselves? So we decided to fix that. And now you can just toggle on the auto responsive mode, and then you set the column width to that 150 pixels that you want the fields to be. And then you set labels aside true. And it just gives you exactly that behavior without figuring out the breakpoints yourself. By the way, that set labels aside true means that the labels are rendered on the side of the fields as long as there is space for it. If the form layout is narrower than what is needed to accommodate that, the labels will switch to being above the fields. Another common thing you want to do in a form is to define which fields should be on the same line. So first name and last name probably should be on the same line, and the password and confirm password probably should be on the same line, whereas email field or email address should be, somewhere in between. And the old form layout model doesn't really have any way of doing this per se, but you can inject HTML break elements into it. So you do element factory.create BR, and then, well, it kind of does what you want. But it's kind of a weird API. So we decided to introduce a better one, add form row. So when you add a form row to your form layout, you define a form that says, if there's enough space, render these fields on the same row in multiple columns. And of course, the old form layout model is still the default, and it's still available, and it's not going away anywhere. But you can switch this new model by enabling the auto-responsive mode. Then we have the map component, to which we have finally added support for polygons. So you can do rectangles or rectangles within rectangles that creates holes in that rectangle. And of course, you can do any kinds of polygons, not just rectangles. So this is useful for any kind of GIS application where you need to highlight specific regions of the map. The card component that was introduced in, 24.6 maybe, didn't have a Flow API before, but now it does. So you can set all that content for the various pieces of the card through the Flow API and configure the layout and so on. And the card component is also now out of preview. Some miscellaneous things I want to mention. The dashboard component that shipped in 24.6 as a preview release is now also stable. And the datetime picker component has finally gotten its validation mechanism update similarly to the other input fields. And as always, we've made a bunch of accessibility improvements across the design system, including some new APIs for setting ARIA attributes and so on. I just want to answer a question here from Guttormvik. What about master detail? And yes, indeed, you should be able to nest master detail layouts within each other. So you can have a master detail layout where the detail area contains another master detail layout. You can do that. We're not entirely sure if it works the way we want it to work yet. For example, which of those nested master detail layouts should collapse into an overlay first, and so on. But it does work, and we would be super happy to get feedback on whether or not you feel that it works the way you want it to work.
At least we must name it master detail. So it's
Yeah.
Awesome product naming.
Exactly. That's it for design system.
Wonderful. Let's move on. And let me just quickly switch to Mark's screen. And here we go. Mark.
Yes. So Copilot. Yes, as usual with Copilot, we keep improving and kind of polishing and adding small things kind of continuously. So we can't kind of go into every little detail right now, but let's just jump right in and take a look at some of the bigger kind of highlights in action. So let's see. So what I'm going to show here is now when you create a new view, you can actually change kind of the title, root and view class, and choose to add it to the menu or not. But the main thing here is image to view. So I've spent several seconds drawing this very nice form here, and we can use AI to kind of try to create an approximation of that. So you can, of course, use screenshots or anything. I'm just showing kind of the worst possible kind of UI you could use here. So after thinking for a while now, we have our kind of approximation of that drawing. So that's a pretty nice way to get started. And now you can kind of edit these things as usual, kind of adjust things if it's not perfect and so on. So kind of provides a good starting point.
Who said that you cannot write Java with pencil? Now you can.
Yeah.
On Post-it notes.
So what I want to show here is actually wrap with a vertical layout all the fields here, because the one feature I want to show is actually create component. So this creates a component within your code, so cleaning up the code a little. And what you can then do is easily export it from your IDE. So now I kind of quickly created reusable component from that thing I imported, or kind of my little view. So now you can see kind of the code here. We're not gonna do anything about it, but now we can kind of duplicate this component that I have. So I have a new reusable component. Of course, that's not very interesting to see this exact same thing all the time. So I can actually drill into it. You can see it saying address form at the bottom, and then kind of going to be lazy and use AI to add some setters and getters. So we get some properties for this. Maybe you would normally kind of do that in your IDE by code, but just to show that the AI is also aware now of the context you're editing. So now our component has some properties we can set with the brand new properties panel. So I can kind of change those properties that I exposed right here without going to code. So now I have kind of this reusable component, and kind of you can see here when you double click, you kind of drill into it. You can also see in the outline that you can jump back and forth between kind of seeing the view level and then drilling down into the component itself. And actually I have another kind of my own custom components here to kind of try to drop inside here. So now you'll see that when I update that one, both of these instances will of course change. And now I have kind of nested custom components, and I can drill down to the kind of level I want to edit. So in Copilot, you don't open up a component or view. We edit them inline, but you can clearly see kind of what you are editing now. So again, if I kind of decide to change some things while I'm editing building type selector.java, that will affect kind of all instances of that, of course. So now both of those have changed. So again, yeah, you can kind of drill down into the component that you want to edit. And that was also what I showed with kind of the AI. The properties panel is actually, it's available for all components now, so it's very usable for built-in components as well. Not just the custom components where you have yourself exposed some properties. So yeah, to summarize that quick overview here of highlights, we have the image to view, or actually the whole new view dialog has gotten some new features and is easier to use. But yeah, the image to view is kind of nice. you can create components, so you can structure your code a little bit better, and then kind of use your IDE to further use that and create reusable components. The big thing we have been working on is improving the drill down, kind of, so you can see which context you're editing when you are using your own custom components, and especially nesting those. Something I didn't show was the improved support for base classes. So quite often you have a base class that you extend. And in the screenshot here, you can see that I'm editing my header Java, which is extending something. So some of the things are grayed out because those come from the extended component. And yeah, the properties panel, that's something we have been waiting for a long time. It's like been on top of the list, but not the very top of the list for a long time. So now you can change a lot more things directly in Copilot. Yes, so last thing I should mention about this is that custom component support, including the properties panel, is lagging behind a bit for Hilla. So these things works quite differently in Java versus React. So we kind of had to split that into phases to implement that. So it's now first for Flow, all these things. Yes, moving forward, just kind of highlighting a few kind of smaller things that are some of my favorites. So when you have a custom component, if you can place components inside of it, so it has kind of slots or behaves like a layout or something, you have been able to drag and drop things to it in Copilot. We have improved that a little bit, so it's better showing which methods you take which types. So if you drag an image, all methods that can take an image will show up. If you drag a button, all methods that can take a button will show up. So small but good change. You can delete views. That is actually very nice when it's very easy to create views. So you can get rid of them because it's now quite handy to kind of create a new view, maybe from a screenshot or something, do some adjustments, and then maybe create a component out of it or copy it somewhere else. You can have it as a view as a temporary place to try things or kind of just prototype things. So delete view has been surprisingly handy to have. And last, the dark mode switch is very unnoticeable on top of the theme editor, but you can now quickly switch between light and dark mode themes, which is quite nice because if you are using these both versions, sometimes you forget to check the other one because it's a little bit clunky. And then you have some small bugs with the colors and so on. So now it's easier. Yes. Lastly, this is kind of a little bit of a celebration and a call to action all wrapped into one. So almost exactly 1 year ago, the first version of Copilot was introduced on our blog. That was the version that only supported Hilla. Flow support came later in October, I think. So what I want to say is this. We have come a long way in 1 year, and now is a really good time to try Copilot if you have not. And if now is also kind of a good time to try if you have previously tried it, because things keep evolving. Also, we have reset the 3-day trials or preview button, so it's easy. And yeah, we have also, as you can see in the screenshot here, made it super easy to provide feedback. So this is a new thing that's kind of brought forward for all of Vaadin, not only Copilot. So in the dev mode menu and the button in the lower right or wherever you place it, it now has a quick way to give us free form feedback or help you create a GitHub issue. So just kind of go ahead and try it out and give us some feedback. We love to hear from everyone.
So if you have any kind of questions after this from the webinar, you can also give feedback to try it in the inside Vaadin app while you are developing.
Yeah, and it's kind of like there are several levels, so it will help you to create an issue if you find like this is bugging, but also if you're like, hey, I would want this other feature, or this should work in a different way, it's super easy to just kind of send a generic feedback that you can just give us free-form feedback. So that
Or
that lowers.
congratulate the team for 1 year milestone through the feedback.
Yeah,
I think they would be
they might
thrilled.
like that. Yes. So, but yeah, it's a good way to get in touch with the team. And as I said, feel free to comment on anything, not just Copilot things.
Yeah, this goes actually to our internal Slack channel for the whole team to see, and many others in Vaadin as well. So we'll be thrilled to kind of see every piece of feedback you can give to the team.
Yes. Good and bad. Just
Only
send
good.
it our way. Yeah. Okay, so I think that's it for Copilot for now. So next up is Control Center.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mark. That was really great. Let's move on to the Control Center. Jonas.
All right. So with Control Center, the kind of marquee feature is databases. But before jumping in there, I guess my favorite is the work that we have been doing to make it smoother to get started with Control Center. And basically kind of what we like to get done is that your journey from finding Vaadin and clicking create a new Vaadin application to actually deploying something in production, we try to optimize that to be as smooth and easy as possible. And we know that kind of DevOps parts are always hard in everything that you develop in software. So that's a really kind of tricky puzzle to solve, but we try to kind of make it easier at least. So that means basically that if you go to Vaadin.com and click create Vaadin app button going to start with Vaadin.com, the skeleton that you now get from there, it is ready for deployment right away. So you don't have to do anything in there. So kind of a little changes in there is that we include the Control Center starter dependency in there, and that has become much smarter. So it understands when you are just tinkering around in your local environment, not going to be deploying anywhere. So it behaves a bit differently from when you actually are in production. So what I mean with this is that we had a hard time choosing what is the kind of default database that we should be using in here. So we choose both. We have both H2 in here as well as Postgres, and it works in such a way that when you go and start a new Vaadin application, you don't need to have anything installed apart from Java and some kind of text editor. Hopefully a proper ID like IntelliJ, but nevertheless, add quite little installed in there to get started. But when you want to kind of build your project out to be an actual production capable application, then you probably need a real database to run in production. And for that, we actually made the choice of having all the tests generated in such way that these are using test containers. So if I'm running a test in here, it actually downloads and spins up a Postgres instance on the fly. So that way we can make sure that we are actually testing with the same database as we could be supporting in production. In case you are choosing Postgres for this. So that was the kind of first part of this. Another kind of cool thing that has been way too hard this far has been login. So now when you run this app locally, you actually get the proper login in here. So you can go and just, let's say, log in with some example user in here. And, okay, wrong word. User and password should be top secret. Maybe not the best password. Anyways, you actually get to log into your application immediately. And so the login works out of the box. But in addition to that, we also have this impersonation in here. So we can switch users on the fly. So I can be an admin, I can be a user again, I can log out. So all of this is super handy to kind of test in when you are developing your application. And the cool thing is that when I go to production with this, let's see where I have my admin console. So when I go to production with this and put an application in there, I can just choose that I'll enable identity management. And if I go there and deploy the same application, it actually uses Keycloak out of the box for this same application. You don't have to configure anything, it just works by default. So in here, this is a bit different user because I'm now running in a production database, and in here I can just take a look at my application and identity management and see that I have myself here listed as a user, and I could enable all kinds of fancy stuff like multi-factor authentication and so forth. But the key in here is that the journey from building a new application, creating a new application, to actually getting that to work in production, that is way smoother than before. Okay, that kind of leads to the marquee feature of databases. So what we have in there is that it automatically sets up a clustered cloud-native Postgres for you. So this is fully production ready, and it's automatically set up per application. So your application gets a real dedicated database, but it can share the same node so that it doesn't add any overhead to your, or it minimizes the overhead in your cluster. And the cool trick that we do is that when you push your application to production, Control Center can on the fly enable the production database. So it just kind of injects that with Spring and it switches over to production. Furthermore, we have flyway support in there. So it can support automated migrations of your schema. So when you create a new application version that supports new features, then you just kind of add a migration script and push that to production. And finally, we have backups. So kind of a full basics for a database that you get without much configuration in there. So if I take a look of that, how that looks like. So let's say one thing that we had in here. So this is, maybe I show the application first. Let's be an admin. So this is just a task list application generated in there. So if I put something in the database, it creates a task in there, and this is now running on localhost, so it's using H2 by default in here, so it's just in memory. But if I'm doing the same thing now in production, I have the production application in here, choose the task list and put bar on my to-do list. I guess I need to be going to bar and do some foo. So with that, it actually goes to your production database. The handy thing is that what I really like with IntelliJ is that you can actually connect this to both clusters, Kubernetes clusters, as well as databases in there really easily. So I can just go and inspect that bar ended up in my database. So this is really, really handy way of kind of checking that everything works out of the as it should. So finally, the migration scripts, these are just normal SQL statements that do the whatever changes you need for your database schema, and this automatically deployed. In order to make that a bit more transparent in production, we also have in your application database migrations, so it actually shows what database scripts have been deployed in there. It shows the status of those deployments. So if something goes wrong, you understand it more easily than you have. And actually, everything that I did show in here is completely free. So try it out, and it would be awesome to hear your feedback on this. As this is, we try to kind of push this Control Center forward as fast as we can. Any questions this far? Not yet. All right. So the final feature in here is database backups. So it's centralized for control center. It basically takes backups of all the applications that you have deployed, and so you can either take the backup by just clicking backup now, but more realistically, you want to schedule backups that you can have on the daily or weekly or whatever basis automatically being taken, and these are being listed then on your database console on what have been backed up. So we support all kinds of cloud storage. You can basically configure any kind of Kubernetes support the volumes in there, but we have good instructions for these three. And then there is a final kind of detail that you see backup method. That's a bit kind of a tricky on detail in Postgres, that there are two ways to take backups, and we support both. So we support this Barman object store as well as volume snapshots. And it bit depends on the situation which one you want to use, and actually some want to use both. So like have a object store snapshots, object store backups taken like a bit more infrequently for archival purposes, and then volume snapshots taken frequently for basically your day-to-day operations. And I think the kind of a basic recommendation is that if you are kind of locked into a certain cloud, so you don't really need to have like movability between clouds, volume snapshots are quite a bit faster. So both restore and backup, they are instant. So that's kind of positive in there. And they also, if you want to have like a full possibility for choosing any timestamp from when you're restoring, they also support vol archive. So basically backup transactional logs that you can kind of combine this volume functionality with transactional logs. While as on the Barman object stores, this is always based on those transactional logs. They are a bit slower, but they are older and maybe more robust way of taking your backup. So this is very good for archival purposes when you want to have like a monthly backup store somewhere in a cold store or something like that. All right, that was everything that I wanted to say about the control center.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jonas. At the moment, we don't have any questions, so I think we can move forward. Modernization Toolkit. We've made some really nice progress with the Modernization Toolkit, building on top of the previous release 24.7. We basically have now expanded the Vaadin 7 coverage, depending on your application. But in case of typical Vaadin 7 application, we can reach level of roughly around 80%. In some cases, with some applications, even higher. So things are looking really, really good from the migration automation viewpoint for Vaadin 7 application users. And some of the key components that were delivered with this release are especially the grid component, which is a fairly massive component, but of course the others as well, the buttons, list select, and whatnot. To have a bit more deeper dive into what is at the moment included, use the API documentation link here. And in case you want to try and see how Modernization Toolkit works, depending on your plan, it might be included, it might not be included, but in any case, you can use the free analyzer to check out the coverage that we can automatically migrate with Modernization Toolkit. So really, really great advancements in that area as well.
There is also in the new thing in that analyzer tool that not only you can run it for free and see statistics for your application, so that's handy by itself. So I don't think that there is any reason why not to kind of check out stats for your application. But there is also now like a details mode where you can opt in to take a bit more full, thorough analysis and share that with Vaadin expert in our team. And we basically set up a meeting where our experts can kind of walk you through the deep dive analysis and give you kind of insights what they see in there and what might be the challenges for modernizing that with the Modernization Toolkit. So I think if you have a Vaadin 7 or Vaadin 8 application and you're pondering what to do about it, so at least run the kind of just a quick run out of that. And if you want to have external insights, how your application looks like, check out with our experts, and such a session is completely free.
Absolutely. Good addition. All right. No questions regarding Modernization Toolkit at the moment, so I think we can move on. And next up, we've got roadmap. Jonas.
All right, could you share my screen?
Yes, absolutely. There we go.
So as always, you can find our roadmap from the menu roadmap, and the kind of a high-level overview, I guess, would be good for this session. So as you can imagine, our team is kind of heading to summer vacations, and then many are already working on features that are landing in Vaadin 25. The next release, Vaadin 24.9, is going to be fairly thin. So in there, we'll add some more custom component support and some more full stack signal support in there, but we don't have anything massive to ship in 24.9. Guys, correct me if somebody is shipping something massive in there. So now is good time to announce those.
There might be more flow signal stuff, but no promises at this point, since we really want to make sure that we have all the absolutely required things for Vaadin 25 in good order before we start working on anything else.
Yeah. So in 24,
I think the things listed for Copilot are actually pretty cool, but yeah.
So they are cool and massive. Yeah, the Copilot is kind of special child in a way that they are able to ship things more fast than rest of the platform. Your platform is kind of integrated, and so we don't sneak in any feature. And sometimes Copilot guys are able to sneak in new experimental features even faster than the rest of us. So we are jealous of that.
Yeah,
so 25 is the next big release that we have, and I believe that at least for me, the coolest thing that we are working on is simplified theming system. So Rolf and the team have been working on set of base themes that make it much simpler for you to build your own themes on top of Vaadin, and we are working on a fresh new theme called Aura that is building on that mechanism. We are not yet kind of completely certain if we are able to ship that in 25 or would it be like 25.1, but that's the target anyways, to get that to 25. Rolf, do you want to add anything? Some commitments?
No commitments. No commitments at this point. Yeah, no, but yeah, so well, basically what you said. Another thing I want to mention is that we are working on Tailwind support.
Yeah, that's actually it's mind-boggling how that is able to work with Java as well. So that was like the biggest brain explosion in the past weeks when I understood how your team has been building that.
Yeah, it turns out to be a lot easier than we expected. We're still not sure if we can have full Tailwind support in 24.5.0 because we still need to integrate with Tailwind's own build system that compiles the style sheet with the classes that you're actually using in your application. But at the very least, we should be able to provide a subset of Tailwind in 25.0, and then maybe in 25.1, if not in 25.0, we will have full Tailwind support.
Yeah. Could you speak of the native HTML popover as well?
Yes, also something that we don't know if it will make it to 25. But so the well, HTML now has a native way of doing overlays called popover. It's not an element; it's an attribute that you apply to an element. And well, the thing is that it's because Vaadin's own overlays are not currently using it. If you want to use a third-party component, for example, or build your own that utilizes that native popover mechanism, they won't work very well together because the stacking won't work correctly. So we are intending to refactor all the overlays used by Vaadin components to use that native HTML popover so that you can use any third-party modern component that uses those, or use it yourself in your own components. That will also, as a nice side effect, improve the accessibility of some of our components.
And then we'll have big plans for Control Center. So we'll, like the technical version number of Control Center in 24.8 is 1.3. We'll jump to 2.0 in here. And the foundational thing that we do in there is that we implement a native Kubernetes operator for Vaadin. And that kind of moves a bit of the control from the admin console to Kubernetes directly, and that helps to make CI pipelines and all that much simpler. So essentially, you can operate Control Center without even controlling the UI. UI makes it easier, but it's kind of a way more native way of doing that. And the second thing that we are doing there, we are building all the kind of images, put native builds for these, so we make it more lightweight, so that it doesn't kind of need that much memory. It's kind of right now it's hard to get squeezed in 4 gigs of memory instance if you want to just do some hobby stuff, but with the more lightweight images, that should be completely possible. And finally, a big thing for production deployments is that we'll include a blue-green deployment strategy in Control Center, basically meaning that you can publish applications as frequently as you want to, whether that's like every hour or something like that. Control Center will take care that no user who is logged into application is dropped out. So it basically looks at the sessions where there are still users around and keeps those around, and only after the sessions has been drained, then kind of downgrades those. So we might also include a kind of a notification for users that if they want to get some more features that have just been shipped, they can log out and in, but that's kind of unclear if we want to do that exactly. So those are kind of big things in 25. There is many more. So in order to kind of see all the details, we have this GitHub link in here. So the GitHub board shows everything that is in there, and you can go and comment our tickets that basically define what is happening for each of those.
Awesome. We are running a bit short on time, but let's check very quickly if we've got any questions here.
I think there were 2 questions in the beginning that I could cover at the very least.
Let's do it. Let me just find those questions here.
There was one about component effect and another about nesting menus. I can maybe start talking.
If you can just, yeah, there's quite a few.
Yeah. Actually, I can even find it here and read it maybe. Yeah, the component effects look like an event listener. Yes, there you had it. Is there something more general regarding event listening for Vaadin? So, I mean, it's an event listener, but it's a magical event listener. If you even could share my screen very quickly, I could show how magic it is. Yeah, there we have it. So, I mean, this is what it does, but it's a shorthand for doing these things. So this is a very generic signal effect, and what that means is that it's a magic event listener, because any signal value that you read within that callback will become a dependency. So whenever any of those signals change, the effect callback will run again and again and again. And this is the whole magic with signals, that you can listen to those changes from those signals, but you don't need to manually manage adding and removing listeners, because the other thing that this component effect does is that it ties everything to this button instance. So this listener is active only when this button instance is attached. If we detach the button, then the listener goes away, doesn't leak any memory or anything. And if we attach it again, then it becomes active again. So it's kind of an event listener, but it's very magical, and that's the whole reason for why I think these signals are so fundamental.
I think kind of magical can be like a toxic word. I will think this in terms of C++ and allocating and releasing memory. So in a way, if you think how much hassle that was back in the days, I think that will kind of be as massive improvement for people not needing to kind of both adding and removing listeners.
Yeah, it's quite good comparison with automatic garbage collection. That's true.
No more malloc. Awesome.
Yep.
We've got another question here for you, which is regarding nest menus from annotations.
Yeah, so I guess that refers to this thing that we introduced in 24.6 or 7, I don't remember, where you in flow code can just add menu and then it automatically populates this menu. So we built that as the simplest possible thing. There's actually some code somewhere that reads those in your application and populates it. So you can add additional things there if you want, but out of the box, there's no hierarchy support.
All right. Let's take one final question. This one is regarding camera controls and GPS. And I assume that we are talking about mobile devices. Any thoughts on this one? Can we control native features of a mobile device?
For camera control, what you can do, I don't remember if we have an API for it, but for the upload component, I think we have an API for it. Rolf maybe remembers. For the upload component, you can say that, no, actually, just say that if the accepted content type is image, then on mobile devices, it will automatically open the kind of native mobile thing where you can either choose from your gallery or take a new image. So that's one thing. GPS, I guess that refers to kind of in general the location API in the browsers. That's something that we don't have built-in support for. It's not very many lines of JavaScript to integrate it. I think there was a blog post about that a year or two ago maybe. So that's something you can have a look at. But no specific additional plans for that. But also those are small features, so just kind of file a feature request, and if lots of people give thumbs up on that on GitHub, then we will certainly take it into account when planning what to do next.
So that's something that could be mentioned via the dev menu button.
Exactly.
Let the team know. Cool.
Yeah.
Taking the very last question here regarding Vaadin, Hilla, and use of Kotlin.
Yeah.
How does it work? Does it work?
It works. There are a couple of small gotchas that we're still working on, but in general it works. So the logic that generates TypeScript code for accessing your server-side endpoints, that also understands Kotlin code. It can take nullability annotations, for instance, from Kotlin into account also. There are a couple of small gotchas. There are open tickets for those, but in general it works. But there are, I said, a couple of small details.
Great.
A lot of Kotlin questions. So if you are a Kotlin fan and are in the chat, just kind of chime in, and if you should have more ingrained support for Kotlin. I mean, it works, but there is so much in Kotlin that we could be using to build nicer APIs. So but haven't kind of diverged the focus to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Feedback is always welcome and super, super helpful. But we are already way past our targeted 1 hour time slot. So let's use this very last minute here to quickly mention about our upcoming conference, Vaadin Create 2025. Once again, we are doing the conference in Frankfurt, Germany in October. We had a really great Vaadin Create 2024 conference, and I'm personally really looking forward to meet all of you at the upcoming Vaadin 25 Create conference. And we still have some early bird tickets available, so please feel free to land on the Vaadin Create 25 page, and from there you'll get to the to purchase the tickets with the early bird prices, and that'll be still available till the end of June, so not too many days left.
And we'll be all in the conference, so truly looking forward to see all you guys there.
Lots of deep dives, lots of good sessions, and very practical discussions.
And lots of signals.
Lots of signals, all sorts of signals. All right. Well, with that, I would like to thank you all for your participation. It was really great hour. Well, an hour and 10 minutes. Really enjoyed it. And yeah, till the next time in 2 weeks, we have the Signals webinar with Leif. So see you in 2 weeks.
All right. See you guys.
See you. Have a good one.
Bye.
Bye-bye.